Hello everyone, it's great to be with you today, even if it's from far away. I'm hoping your new year is getting off to a good start and you're ready to get back to all of the activities for school that make homeschooling so rewarding. I'm Jan Bedell, and today we're going to talk about making learning easier. Isn't that what everybody wants? Whether you have a child that's gifted or challenged or anything in between, you want learning to be easy for them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about something that you may never have heard of, and that's neurodevelopment. I'm a neurodevelopmentalist, been doing that for about 25 years, and what's so exciting about that is it changes the brain so that it works better. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. When I was your age, I just wanted to be a wife and mother, and God had other plans. He did give me two beautiful girls, so He granted me the wife and the mother part. But when my daughter was born, my oldest, she had some significant delays. And so I worked for a long time trying to find help for her, private school, public school. And then I found out about homeschool. It had just started being legal, I guess, at that point. And we tried that for 5 years with a traditional approach because I'm a teacher. So I thought, okay, I can do this. And after 5 years of that traditional approach, I was about ready to give up. So hopefully that's not where y'all are at the moment, but it can be challenging when you have special needs. So she just made a tremendous difference. It just changed her life. When we started doing neurodevelopment with her, I did that for another 3 years in homeschooling, and ever since then I've been telling other people about it. So today our goals are to help you know how to make things easier for your child by helping you understand the neurodevelopmental approach, which you may have just been hearing about today, and equip you with information that can unlock your child's fullest potential. Now, to be able to do that, we really have to think differently. So this is just a little experiment. You'll see this on the screen. To be able to think differently, you have to look at things differently. Now, I have seen this logo for FedEx for years and years, and you probably have too. But until it was pointed out to me that there's something hidden in here, then I didn't even know there was anything else to look at. But as you can see, there's an arrow hidden in this logo. So now when I see these FedEx trucks go around, all I really see is the arrow, because it reminds me of how I had to think differently when I started looking at neurodevelopment. I would say the majority of you have curriculum that you're using, a specific curriculum, and they're asking for your child to fill in the blank. Well, we have a little bit different thought, and that is you need to put input, so the child needs lots of input instead of just filling in the blanks, which is called output. So before you can get good output, you want to have good input. That's putting the information in, which is actually teaching. So let's look at this a little bit differently. A lot of people build everything around their curriculum thinking that is the key. But the real key to making learning easier is looking at how the brain is functioning and how can we make it function better. So I just want to get us on the same page here and make sure that we have the same desires. So I'm thinking you want a child who can read and comprehend, be great at math, be able to stay on task, follow directions, of course, and then our greatest desire is be independent learners. So I'm sure that you have some commonality with me there. I see that at all conventions I've been to over the years. But what we're looking for there is a house that's built on a good foundation. If a house in the physical is not on a good foundation, it just kind of implodes. There's cracks in the walls, and then everything kind of stops working. The windows don't come up and the doors don't open. So that same thing can happen with our brain if we haven't built the right kind of development. So the brain is really the foundation for making learning easier. Now, what do we do here? Because this is a totally different way of looking at things. I want you to look at something that's pretty common that you've heard of in a different way too. You know, we've heard for years about learning styles. You find out what your child's learning style is, and then you teach to it. Well, what happens there is you kind of isolate one area of information coming into your child's brain. Much information needs to come in a different way. So some information better comes in auditorily, some comes in better visually, some comes in better tactily. So we really need to teach that direction. So the learning styles is really limiting the child. What we believe is we need to increase these skills in all of those areas, and then the child can take in information the easiest way for that information to come in. Now, one of the things we want to do first is build the foundation of the brain. And that's done when the child is on their belly doing cross-pattern movement. And the interesting thing is that you can go back and get this development to come in. So if you want to look at, I don't have time to go into this right here in great detail, but there's When Does Homeschooling Really Begin? That's going to talk about those lower level development. You can see that on Brain Coach Tips on our YouTube channel. But basically what you want to do is look at whether they can do good movement crawling on their belly like an army crawl, up on their hands and knees, and then walking in a good cross pattern. Now you might say, what does this have to do with any kind of learning? Well, when your brain is better organized, then the learning can take place. What those lower levels do is make the information come from one side of the brain to the other so that the two hemispheres can work together. I've worked with someone that was 55 and 54 years old before, typical intelligence, but always struggled with reading. You can see on this chart that after doing organization activities and working on their short-term memory, that kind of thing, just brain stimulation, they went from a lower score to 3.5 years higher in their reading comprehension ability. And this is without doing any reading. No reading program. These were adults. They didn't have time to do much of a program, so there's no specific reading. But just by organizing their brain, this has happened over and over for children and adults that we've worked with. So again, a different way of looking at things. The other thing you want to look at is, after the brain is organized, how is the brain receiving information? When information comes into the brain, it comes in through our 5 senses: the touch, the taste, the smell, the hearing, and the visual. So if information comes in well through all those channels, then it's smooth sailing. But if there's hypersensitivity, say to sound, and they just want to turn off their auditory system, or if they're distracted because visually they're hypersensitive, then information doesn't come in as well. And this can influence which learning style that they have chosen. Now, what we're going to talk about today is inputting information into the brain so that it changes it. And this is called plasticity. So we have about 3% cell bodies in our brain. 97% of our brain is connections. So those connections are built by stimulation. So what we tend to do is we want function to happen. So we concentrate on function, being able to write on the line, be able to read with phonics, all those functional abilities. But what we need to do is look at stimulating the brain so that it makes the connections necessary to bring the function. Because if you keep looking at the problem, it's going to distort what you need to be doing. The plasticity of the brain is where you stimulate the brain and the dendrites grow. Those are the little appendages on the end of the neurons. Now, I have a quick story about Jim. He was a bright little 10-year-old. He came in one day from school very upset, just went past his mom, didn't say a word, and went and sat in the living room. His mom went to kind of investigate what was going on because she thought that was pretty rude, and found this little 10-year-old boy with tears rolling down his face. And she said, Jim, what in the world is going on? And he says, you just don't know what it's like to be me. And she investigated further and found out that he was really having trouble writing. Some people would call him dysgraphic, the information from his brain was just not getting out in his hands. So in his brilliance, he said, you don't understand, my hand feels fluffy. And his mom's going, your hand feels fluffy? He says, yes, it feels fluffy. Well, that was his brilliant way of describing a neural pathway that was not working well, so the information was not getting from his brain to his hand to be able to form those letters. With some neurodevelopment of deep pressure and pressing on his arms, his mom was able to help him make better connections, and now he's a dentist, working with both hands and doing oral surgery. So it really could makes a huge difference. You know, you could go to handwriting practice and work and badger and everything, but it's not going to make a difference if that connection is not made. So we really need all of our channels to work well. I just want to demonstrate a little bit about how that's necessary and why it's necessary. Certain information, like I said, needs to come in to learn something the best way. Let's take cutting hair, for instance. Now, you can watch a lecture on that. You can hear someone describe it. But until you get in and really do that with your hands and tactily experience that haircut, you're not going to do as well. So that needs to come in that way best. What about a sunset? A sunset, you can only see it. You can't hear it. You can't touch it. You have to see it. Now, we believe that math operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, those operations are best coming in visually. Now, let's take long division, for instance. Typically, when we get to long division, what do? We sit the child down and we talk and talk and talk. We say, now we're going to divide 226 by 5. And what's under the bracket is what we're dividing into, and we're dividing by 5. And you just talk and talk and talk, and it's like, if the child knew what to say, they would say, I know your mouth is moving, but I have no clue what you're saying. One way to make math a little easier is to use this technique, and this is one thing that you could use for division. You could say 5 goes into 2. No. 5 goes into 22. Yes. Record your answer, multiply, subtract, bring down. So you tell them those keys, and they just keep doing that. Divide, record, because sometimes, you know, if the answer is 0, they forget to record, then the whole problem's wrong. But can you see how if you're doing it for them and they're watching, because it's coming in visually better, and you're giving them those little cues, then they're really going to get that long division quickly. That is something that we teach with visual circle math. So if you have a child that's behind in math, and you don't want to go through a whole curriculum for a whole grade to try to bring them up to grade level, this is a great option, because you can bring them up quickly from, it just works on operations. It's not a full curriculum. It's not going to work on money and time and measurement and all those kinds of things. But this will just quickly teach them and give you a script to go by that will quickly bring them up to grade level in their math skills. So we've talked about the tactile information coming in and the visual information. What about auditory? So in our view, the math facts are best coming in auditorily. So, and what do? We bring up these flashcards, and they don't have an answer on them. So it's a visual cue with no answer. So that's an output card instead of an input card. And we expect something wonderful to come out of their brain because we have this card held up, you know. It's just the way society's done it for all these years. Well, we have a new way of doing it, and that is with rapid recall. So with rapid recall, they see, hear, say, and write 5 math facts 14 times in a day. Now, you might think, oh my gosh, that would take forever. But all of this only takes 6 minutes. You do 2 minutes of listening, 1 minute of flash with the answer on there, 2 minutes of listening and writing at the same time so that you get that muscle memory of exactly what the math fact is, because when do we usually use our math facts? That is when we're writing the problem. And then you do a minute of flash again. So 6 minutes of input, and then you practice on a speed drill just to keep them fresh. It's amazing what can happen. You know, when I talk about auditorily information coming in with math facts, let's think about this. If you say 6 plus 2, you tend to hear 8 in your head. So that's what I'm talking about with the best way of that information coming in. I had a teacher, a friend of mine, that had taught first grade for 17 years. And she tried the organization activities and the rapid recall in her classroom. And she said never in her 18 years has she had such an easy year. Children in first grade wanting math homework, wanting to take tests. I mean, she said it just turned everything around, made her whole year a lot easier. This is just a quick comparison of the school. We did some research, and there were 4 classes of first grade. And you'll see the dark blue is where they all tested at the beginning of the year on their math facts. And they all did the same state adopted a curriculum, but the one on the right added the rapid recall to their curriculum. So you can see what a difference that it made. And you know, math facts are the cornerstone of math, really. Just think about how much less time your child would spend doing math if they knew their math facts, or correcting mistakes, because they wouldn't have made them in the first place. So this is a really good program that you might consider to make math easier for you. Now, one thing that we have to really look at when we're receiving information is how is our visual system working? So are we bringing in the right kind of information? Our central detail vision, that's how we see right in the center here. That's developed in these lower stages. And also tracking, side to side and vertical tracking happens in these lower stages. So if they don't spend enough time there, oftentimes these skills are off when they're trying to read or do math. So one thing you want to do is check their convergence, or their ability for their eyes to move in together and move back out together. So what I want you to do is get a pencil topper or something that they'll look at, hold it about 18 inches from the bridge of their nose, come in toward the nose to about 2.5 inches, and then back out, and then do a little bit of horizontal and vertical tracking. So, and then come back in again. What you're looking for is those eyes coming in together, not, staggering in, but smoothly coming in together. And if you see, they'll come together, and all of a sudden, whoop, this eye just turns out. That means they've lost their convergence, And that could be a problem. Can you imagine that you're reading along and your eyes aren't working together? They may skip words, they may get to the end of the line and come to another line and it's not there. They're not in the right place. So it can be a huge issue that has nothing to do with phonics or their ability to read. Now, one thing that we found that can really make our learning easier is by using 3 keys. We call this frequency, intensity, and duration. Frequency is how often information comes in. Intensity is how strong that information is. And duration is short periods of time, it's what we prefer, and then over time, repeated over time. So when you use these 3 keys to teach anything, much can happen positively. So that's what we do in all the different areas of stimulation. One of the main ones that we work on is processing. This is your short-term memory. You might ask, why can't my child follow directions? Why can't he remember to do his chores? And you wonder if it's rebellion, when it could be just their processing. Their ability to hold the pieces together is not there, so they're not able to follow through. So looking at the processing, that's part of the foundation. You've got organization of the brain, information coming into the brain, and then that short-term memory, both auditory and visual, to look at. The auditory is the one that globally affects the child the most. So we're going to equip you with something that can help you determine how your child is doing there as far as the short-term memory. I think that's already provided for you with links on the site for the convention. So that free auditory test kit at brainsprints.com, you can find that and find out where they are. A 5-year-old should be able to do 5, a 6-year-old 6, a 7-year-old or an adult should be able to do 7. Now, the way this is affected is the behavior is often more like a younger child. You think, you're 12, why are you playing with the 5-year-olds at church, or something like that. Or they just act more immature in their behavior. It also affects their ability to follow directions. You say, Johnny, go upstairs and get your shoes and socks and come back down. And they trot off upstairs and you're getting ready, and now you're ready, and now you're stomping up the stairs all mad because he's not doing what you've asked him to do. You're thinking it's behavior, but he was upstairs. He might even have his shoes and socks, but after that it was wah, 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 wah. He lost that, couldn't hold it, so he got distracted and went off to do something else. It also affects their comprehension, ability to hold pieces of conversation together, what they've read, all kinds of comprehension. It affects their ability to think in the big picture, conceptual thinking. So oftentimes they do impulsive things and sometimes dangerous things because they don't see the outcome. They can't hold all that together. Oftentimes conversational language is a challenge because they'll come up to you when you're talking. They don't want to interrupt, but if they don't tell you right now, they're going to forget. So they chance it, and then oftentimes they're in trouble. Or they'll be, you'll be having a conversation, and they'll say something that happened a few minutes ago, not on the current topic, and it seems kind of odd. So it can affect them with their peers as well. It affects their ability to attend and stay on task as well. So that's always a problem, for independent learners. And one of the big keys for many of you that are trying to teach your children to read, especially if they're having some struggles or special needs, is the use of phonics. Now, I tried teaching my child that had learning struggles, with phonics for 5 years. She knew every sound of OUGH, all 70 phonograms, and she couldn't hold the pieces of those things together in a word to get it out like to save her life. She could do some 3-letter words, but past that, just forget it. So we did a different approach for a little while. While we worked on her processing, we added the phonics back in, and then she had the best of both worlds. That made reading easier for her as well. So be sure to get your test kit from brainsprints.com, and you can also, when you get that test kit, you'll get a visual test kit as well. Now the visual is important, but it doesn't seem to be as globally affecting as the auditory. So other visual problems that might come up if they don't see it right, or if they're not holding the pieces together. A preschooler might have trouble remembering their numbers or letters or words. And then for an older child, it affects everything. Their math, their spelling, their reading, visual information, and oftentimes eye contact as well. So what do you do about this? There's a simple game that you can play twice a day for 2 minutes for auditory, twice a day for 2 minutes for visual, called Digit Spans. And you can find that out in your test kit. It'll tell you about that, what you can do about it. Now, another area that we want to look at after organizing the brain, bringing information in through receiving, through our 5 senses, then our short-term memory kicks in, and then we learn something, but where does it go? Where are we storing it? Now, some people just don't understand because they've taught it to them, the light bulb comes on, and then all of a sudden they show it to them the next day, and they look at it like cow at a new gate. They don't even remember you told them about that. So you might be asking, why does my child know something one day and not the next? Why does it take him so long to do everything, and why can't he remember things for a test? This has to do with our final part of the foundation, and that's storage of information. Where in the brain, which hemisphere is the information stored in? We believe that this has a directly effect from dominance, what we call dominance. And dominance starts with your hand. You're either right-handed genetically or left-handed genetically. And if you're mixed, we probably need to talk. We have a free consult at brainsprints.com that you can call and talk to us, and we can give you some ways to help with that kind of thing if they're still mixed-handed. Or if you think they're using the wrong hand, they started out one way and they were pushed one direction, that can affect a lot of things. Now, some of these things, these are symptoms of someone that's mixed dominant. This may sound familiar to you. Their emotions just run on high. They're just like it's right here on the tip of their shoulder, and anything can just knock it off, and then they have this extreme reaction. Or they lack analytical thought and logic. They just don't, it doesn't make sense to them. They could be reversing letters. They go easily into their emotions and are hard to come out of that. There may be some stammering or stuttering if there's mixed dominance. And then when they get under pressure of a test, they just don't even have access to what they know because they go into their emotions so easily. So if you have poor visual storage, you might be a tactile or auditory learner. If you have poor auditory storage, you're not storing your auditory information in the right place, a visual or tactile learner you might be classified as. If you're poor at auditory and visual, you're probably a tactile learner. And in our view, and what we've experienced, is that's the most inefficient channel to bring information in. You really need to be able to bring information in visually and auditorily. So, to be able to utilize information, you have to have good receiving of information coming in, processing, storing, and then you'll be able to function. If you can't, it's just a pretty frustrating situation for you and for them, and they don't understand why you say that they should know this, and they can't remember. And so it's frustrating for them too, oftentimes causing them to have struggles of self-esteem even, thinking, well, I must not be very smart because Mom says I know this and I don't know it. So we have an analogy about these children with disorganized brains, or those that are just using one learning style. And that is a computer that's hooked up to dial-up versus one that is hooked up to high-speed internet. It's the same computer, but it functions a whole lot different. So that's the same thing that we see with these children with disorganized brains. Neurodevelopment can really help that. I want to encourage you to find out more about it, and we're available for questions if you need to talk to somebody. We have free consults for 15 minutes just focused on your child, and obviously we have time to do some chats as well, live chats. I look forward to sharing more with you, and you can find lots of information on brainsprints.com. See you later.